Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn. I'm your host, Deb Philman. At The Reason We Learn, we aspire to be part of the solution. The purpose of this show is to take a good, honest, potentially painful look at the way kids are being educated. We know we can do better, and this is where we'll talk about how. Let's learn something. Hello, everyone. Welcome to The Reason We Learn, and this is Dissident Dispatch, the weekly show where I, your dissident, your education dissident, give you a dispatch, a little report on things I've been following across the past week, sometimes more than a week, and try to help you make sense of some of it in an hour or two. So you can go out and tell other people or just better understand it for yourself, whatever you like. A little bit of housekeeping before we get started. If you are new to this channel, if this is your first time here, please consider hitting that subscribe button to be notified when I make new content. And it also supports me, supports the algorithm, gets the videos out there. More people will see them, or people will learn from this conversation. And it's not like I know everything, but I'm presenting information I bet a lot of people have not seen or heard about before. And more importantly, I try to put it together in such a way that you understand how it relates, how these stories relate to each other. Everything on that thumbnail is actually connected. They're not three separate segments. I might present them as separate segments, but they all go together, and I'll be explaining that. So please do subscribe, like this broadcast, share this broadcast, go tell your friends to come join us live in the chat. And we're on Rumble, Twitter, X, and YouTube this evening. So wherever they would most like to be, we are. So what I've said I'm going to talk about today, 3 things, and I listed them in the order: generative AI, global citizenship, and social engineering. But in fact, I'm going to start by reading something to you. So I hope you'll bear with me and be a little bit patient, because I'm going to read something that's a little bit long, and it's more than a couple paragraphs. But I think it's very important to set the stage, because I'm going to spend most of my time talking about global citizenship, what it is, why it is, who's behind it, how it's coming into our schools, what it looks like, et cetera. And then I want you to understand how the social engineering sausage is made. So in order for the people behind global citizenship to get people around the globe, formerly known as individuals, to see themselves as global citizens, they're going to have to do a lot of social engineering, and they're going to do it. They are doing it in a wide variety of ways. So I'm also going to present to you a piece of legislation. I've just plucked it out of Colorado that is sort of one of those things. And when I get to it, you might think this is very granular. That's part of how they do it. Little small things that you might think that's not a big deal. What's the big deal? But it's the buildup of lots and lots and lots of these not very big deals that become the very big deal. And then, of course, generative AI pulls it all together. Everything that's going on right now with global citizenship, it has been in the works for decades. I mean, this is not new, probably longer than that. Probably since the UN became the UN and UNESCO became UNESCO. But before recently, these elite didn't really have the technology to pull it off at scale. They had dreams, they had goals, but they didn't really have what it took to pull it off. So now they do. And what I hope I can achieve in tonight's show is to explain to you the mechanisms, first of all, what it is. What is global citizenship? What do I mean by social engineering? And then how does generative AI fit into all this? But also so you can understand that the response shouldn't be ban AI or ban anything for that matter. It needs to be an understanding of science and technology and education and human beings and teaching and learning and legislation and so on that aligns philosophically with where we want to be, what kind of people we want to be. One of the things that's been concerning me lately, I'm going to be talking about it a lot in 2024, is philosophy, because I think we keep swatting at flies, I guess is the best term I could use. We keep looking at something we see as bad on the surface, like porn in the libraries, for example, or the overuse of AI, and we go whole hog at that, or social media, ban it for kids, screens, ban them. And we forget that it's not the technology, it's not the science, it's not this thing that is the problem. It's the philosophy underneath it. It's the why. Why are they being used in the ways that they're being used? For what purpose? And the philosophy of America was that individuals are born with inalienable rights, which derive from natural rights, natural law, and that the purpose of government was to protect those. And so our entire philosophy of the country, of our nation, was to make people politically equal, not economically equal, not physically and emotionally equal, but politically equal. And that if we could protect that, we would have a better chance of having a greater degree of equality and opportunity and all kinds of freedom in every area of our lives, not to mention pursuit of happiness. We would be more likely to be happy when we determined our own destinies. The philosophy behind everything I'm going to talk to you about tonight is radically different from that. The people behind global citizenship look at what I just described and either don't understand it. They have no tradition and weren't brought up in that world and they don't even get it, or they're scared of it. And fear plus some personality defects, if you ask me, like the craven desire for power and control over other humans, drives them. So they genuinely believe they are better people than most people, that they are smarter, that they have the knowledge and authority to dictate other people's lives because they just know better. They know better. Mhm. It is antithetical to everything that is American. And once upon a time, what was, nascent in the West in general, but didn't really take hold as much in Europe and other Western countries as the United States. We have a Bill of Rights, makes us kind of unique. Um, so philosophically, they're trying to change us. And that's not hard to do. That's actually one of the easiest things to do. You just don't teach it to the children. Just don't reproduce the culture. Never teach it. And better yet, replace it with a completely different philosophy known as social justice. Tell children that the greatest purpose in their lives is social justice and don't tell them anything about natural rights and don't tell them anything about individualism. And in fact, make it look sort of icky to think of yourself and your self-interest. And you're on your way. But before I go off on too much of a tangent, I want to start off, as I said, by reading something to you. Now, this came to my attention during a conversation over the weekend, sparked by a post I did about my tutoring. I tutor on the weekends, and one of my students came to me asking to learn about one of the logical fallacies, which is sort of false cause fallacy. I won't use the Latin term, but in English, it's false cause. It's sort of like if A happened before B, B happened because of A. And I thought it was an odd thing for him to ask me to teach. And we've been going through the logical fallacies through a book called The Fallacy Detective. He's in 7th grade. And he said, "Can you teach this to me?" And I said, "Sure, no problem. But might I ask why?" He said, "Well, this came up in debate team last week. He goes to a private school and they outsource their debate team to a local debate league, which is, has public school and private school in it. And he said, we're debating UBI, universal basic income." And I'm thinking, what? You're in 7th grade. I said, "How much do you know about macroeconomics?" Nothing. "How much do you know about, income, inequality, why it is what it is? How much do you know about any of this?" Nothing. Knows nothing. Admits it. "I know nothing." I said, "Okay, I'm just curious. Continue." And he said, "Well, here's the problem. They gave us our evidence pack And I said, what do you mean your evidence pack? And he said, well, they give us all the evidence. We're not allowed to do our own research. I'm sorry, what? You're not allowed to do your own research. No, we're not. Why is that? Well, they tell us that, this is middle school. And if they give us the research now, then when we get to high school, we'll know what, if they give us the evidence, we'll know what evidence looks like. We'll know what good evidence looks like because they will have given it to us. And I said, but how are you going to know how to go look for the evidence? And he said, that's what I wanted to know. Like every time I asked him a question like this, his eyes would go like this. That's what I wanted to know. And I said, okay, so you're definitely not allowed to do your own. No, we're not allowed. Okay. And he starts telling me some of the questions he had, one of which was, wouldn't it be possible for something bad to happen if everyone got money from the government? He also wanted to know where money came from, where the government got the money. Because I asked him, where does it come from? I don't know. I said, do you think that might be important to know? Yeah, I think so. Okay. What happens if you ask the debate coach? They tell me to look in the evidence pack. Oh, I'm not surprised. Anyway, fast forward. All of this was sort of transparently designed to get the kids to debate what the adults wanted them to debate, using the evidence they wanted them to use, and arriving at the conclusions they wanted them to arrive at. Because whether it was the affirmative or the negative, whichever argument they were making, they were all pro UBI. They were just nipping around the edges of, well, this is one reason it's good. No, this is a better reason it's good. There wasn't really anything that was bad. He was very frustrated. Felt like he wasn't really learning anything. He was just repeating things. And I said, how is this even debate? He said, I don't know. And what I noticed about, as I said, his facial expression, every time I asked a question that would be a good question to ask, well, what about this? And wouldn't this be important? For example, I said, who gets to define universal? His face would go, I know. Who gets to define basic? One person's basic might be another person's poor or rich. Again, I know. That's what I want to know. He always had this look on his face like, that seems really important to know. And I felt so bad. Here's a kid who's just being, and I said, well, what would happen if you went back and just plowed ahead and tried to, I can't do that. So he indicated he had every intention of following the rules, doing as he was told, using the evidence pack. He just, I think, was coming to me to vent and get a different perspective. But I'm 1 day out of 7, 1 hour out of 1 day out of 7. And the rest of the time, he's going to go and do what he has to do to get the good grades, to get into good college and so on, because that's the path that he's on, that his parents have him on, et cetera. And then I think he wants to be on. He doesn't have the knowledge and the skills to question the path. So he's struggling to question, why it might be a bad idea for the government to hand money out to people who aren't, necessarily working. And, it was both uplifting to have the conversation and have it impact, but also deeply depressing. And I brought this all to Twitter, X, and people began commenting, and it got a lot of feedback. And somebody in that thread shared with me what I'm about to read to you and pointed out that this was not indoctrination. I called it indoctrination, and he said, no, it's worse. It's worse than indoctrination. It's social engineering. That's what gave me the idea to do tonight's show. But then I noticed that the social engineering was in a specific direction. The UBI, the Green New Deal, that was their other big debate topic so far this year. Everything was in that direction. And throughout the materials were mentions of global citizenship. Why would these kids in Atlanta need to be concerned about somebody getting UBI across the world? Because it wasn't just the United States they were talking about. Because of global citizenship. Why should they be concerned about things like the Green New Deal and its implications for the world and the globe because of global citizenship? And so throughout, they were told in no uncertain terms that they needed to be concerned about this, not because of what was happening right there in their town, their state, their country, but because of the world, the obligations, the world. And their role in it as a global citizen. So social engineering. And the social engineering was taking the form of not just, telling the kid what to believe, but training this child, almost like an animal, to not ask questions. Take what you're given as the word, the gospel. Repeat what you need to repeat. And here's the really creepy part. I asked him, how do you win in this debate? He said, whoever takes the evidence pack, uses the evidence in the evidence pack, uses the greatest number of examples and presents it best, like with presentation skills, and gets the most points that way, that's the person that wins. And then I thought to myself, so this is like American Idol for activism. You're just the best performer of the activism. Here's the packet. Repeat what we want you to repeat. You win. So it's also a sorting mechanism of who are the winners and the losers in this little game of being socially acceptable. Because did I do it right? Did I say the right things? Did I say it passionately enough? And if any of you have seen some of the videos that are circulating out there about high school debate, with kids just sort of yelling at each other with all these platitudes and word salad and like actual debate's not allowed, you'll see where this goes. This is middle school. That's where they're going. It's like AOC auditions on steroids. And that's, I think, what my comments are meant by social engineering. We're going to take these kids, and this is just in debate, but it gets done in classrooms and other ways, and train them. And the reason I asked the question in my thumbnail, are we educating children or are we training bots, is that they may look like humans, but if they're not thinking at all, they're simply repeating. In fact, when I asked him about how are you going to learn to do the research? He said, isn't this how we learn? They give us the material and we repeat it back. He said, isn't that learning? I said, no, that's memorizing, which has its place. We talked about how memorizing can have its place. I said, but if you don't take that information and then apply it and integrate it with other information or knowledge you already have or knowledge you have yet to find, you haven't actually learned anything that's yours. And what can you create? He said, but isn't that how everyone learns? They just repeat what someone else do, or they just copy what other people have done and other people. I said, what did Edison copy to make the light bulb, or the Wright brothers or Mozart and so forth? And he started to get it. He didn't get the look, but he got this kind of, oh yeah. But now imagine how many children don't have these conversations. And I'm not tooting my own horn. I'm by no means like the best teacher out there for this material. I'm just saying, imagine being in a school where this never happens. This conversation doesn't occur. And you get that kind of training. Repeat after me. Dip, dip, A. So the same commenter shared with me this article. And I'm going to get some pronunciation wrong, I am sure. So please bear with me, but I hope you will all read it for yourselves at some point. And this is entitled Weapons of Freedom by Olavo de Carvalho, I think is how it's pronounced. Okay, this is from a diary. The most obvious thing about the analysis of history and society is that when a situation changes considerably, you can no longer describe it with the same concepts as before. In order to account for unheard of facts, not classifiable under known categories, you have to create new concepts or perfect the old ones through criticism. With the stage of world government implementation already in full swing, please note the date of this, 2009. It is pathetic to notice that political analysts, whether in academia or in the media, continue to offer the public analyses based on the old concepts of national state, national power, international relations, free trade, democracy, imperialism, class struggle, ethnic conflicts, etc., when it is clear that none of those bear much relation to the facts of today's world. The most basic events of the last 50 years are, first, the rise of the globalist elites, detached from any identifiable national interest and engrossed in the building not only of a world state, but a unified and entirely artificial planetary pseudo-civilization conceived not as an expression of society, but as an instrument for the control of society by the state. Second, the fabulous advancements of the human sciences, which have been placed in the hands of those elites, means of social domination never dreamed of by tyrants of other times. As early as several decades ago, Ludwig von Bertalanffy, probably butchering that too, 1901 to 1972, the creator of general systems theory, aware that his contribution to science was being used for undue purposes, warned, "It is perhaps the greatest danger of the systems of modern totalitarianism that they are so alarmingly up to date, not only in physical and biological, but also in psychological technology." Psychological technology. The methods of mass suggestion, of the release of the instincts of the human beast, of conditioning and thought control are developed to highest efficacy. Just because modern totalitarianism is so terrifically scientific, it makes the absolutism of former periods appear a dilettantish and comparatively harmless makeshift. In his 1998 book, and this one I might do better, I took some French, L'Empire écologique, la subversion de l'écologie par le modalisme, the ecological empire, the subversion of ecology by globalism, Pascal Bernardin explained in detail how the general systems theory has been used as a basis for the construction of a world totalitarian system, which in the last 10 years has definitively, gone from blueprint to patent reality, a reality which is clear to all but those who do not want to see. Von Bertalanffy, however, was not referring only to his own theory. He speaks of methods in the plural, and ordinary citizens of democracies cannot have any idea of the plethora of scientific resources now at the disposal of the new lords of the world. If von Bertalanffy had to mention names, he would not have omitted Kurt Lewin, perhaps the greatest social psychologist of all times, whose Tavistock Institute in London was founded by the global elite itself in 1947 for the sole purpose of creating means of social control capable of reconciling the permanence of formal legal democracy with the total domination of the state over society. Now, for those of you who aren't familiar, and for those of you who are, a reminder, the Tavistock Institute is where all the gender stuff got started. Gender affirmative care. Gender theory really took off. Child gender transition. They only just in the last year or so shut it down for that, from doing that. And it's been kind of a war ever since. So they started investigating and so on. But 1947, okay, this is not some brand new little phenomenon. This is all part of a bigger goal. Just to give you an idea of how far all this goes, the educational programs of almost all nations of the world, which have been enforced for at least 20 years now, so this is 2009, so go back 20 years from there, are determined by homogeneous rules directly imposed by the United Nations and calculated not to develop children's intelligence or conscience, but to make them docile, malleable, morally characterless creatures, ready to adhere enthusiastically and without discussion to any word of command which the global elite may deem useful for its objectives. The means used to achieve this are non-aversive control techniques, conceived to make their victim not only feel as if he's acting of his own free will when he yields to impositions from authority, but also to develop an immediate reaction of irrational defense to the mere suggestion that he should critically examine the subject in question. So, to pause for a moment, my student is somehow naturally inclined, as many kids are, to question, to say, wait, this doesn't make sense, just giving people money, right? And especially because he comes from a home where his parents work very, very hard. They work very hard and he sees them work very hard and they put him in private school and they make all of this hard work a high priority in their household. So he's even more likely to question just giving things away. And when he tries to ask questions, he's shut down. He's either told don't, or he's directed to the fallacy. That's the amazing thing. He asked to learn about the false cause fallacy because when he questioned in class whether there could be negative consequences of UBI, that just giving things to people might cause something negative to happen, that he was engaging in false cause fallacy. When in fact, the people handing him the evidence pack telling him that poverty is the result of income inequality were doing it. Projection, full blown. But they want him to feel confused and like they can't possibly be, and asking questions is wrong, just to shut him down. And we know there are plenty of students who have already gotten there. And when you try to get through by asking them questions like who defines universal, who defines basic, and how do you know that there isn't going to be a negative consequence or a moral hazard associated? Stop it, fascist, bigot, hater. That's what he's talking about. It would be a euphemism to say that mass application of such techniques bears influence on public education programs. These techniques are the whole content of current schooling. Let me repeat that. Please internalize this. If you take nothing away from tonight's show but this, it would be a euphemism to say that mass application of such techniques, this kind of social engineering, bears influence on public education programs. These techniques are the whole content of current schooling. It's called the affective model. All disciplines, mathematics and science included, have been reshaped to serve psychological manipulation purposes. Pascal Bernardin himself meticulously described this phenomenon in his 1995 book, Machiavel Pedagogue, Machiavelli the Educator. Read it and you will find out why your child cannot solve a quadratic equation or finish a sentence without lapsing into at least 3 solecisms, even though he comes back from school bossing you around like a people's commissar, demanding politically correct behavior of his parents. The quickness with which sudden mutations of mentality, many of which are arbitrary, grotesque, and even absurd, are universally imposed without meeting the least resistance, as though they had emanated from an irrefutable logic and not from despicable Machiavellianism, could be explained by the simple school brainwashing that prepares children to accept new fashions as divine commands. Pronouns, anyone? Make up your name every day, anyone? Sound familiar? Did you ever get the feeling in the last few years like this stuff just poof came out of nowhere and was just accepted? This brand new mentality that a man can literally be a woman and a woman can literally be a man, and no, there's no problem at all with a 6'5" obvious male who looks like the She-Hulk suddenly being a female golfer. No, it's perfectly fine. What's the problem? That's what he's talking about here in 2009. But obviously, school is not the only agency engrossed in producing such results, if only. Big media, now massively concentrated in the hands of globalist megacorporations, play a fundamental role in dumbing down the masses. In order to achieve this, one of the most widely employed techniques nowadays is cognitive dissonance, a discovery made by psychologist Leon Festinger, 1919 to 1989. This is how it works. I'm sure many of you have heard of cognitive dissonance. A discovery made, I said that. If you read today's newspapers, you will see, and this is not today, this is 2009, that Tiger Woods, the golf champion, one of our most beloved citizens of late, is now under heavy attack by newspapers and TV shows because the poor man has been found to have mistresses. Now, he says poor man, but it might be a cultural thing from Brazil to the United States. I'm not sure people in the United States would be like, poor man. Scandal, horror, general indignation threatens to drop half of the adulterer sponsorship deals and strike him off the list of beautiful people who appear in advertisements for sneakers, bubblegums, and miracle diets. But there's a telltale detail. Beside the protests against the sportsman's immorality, there are fierce attacks on right-wing extremists who do not accept abortion, gay marriage, or the inducing of children to premature sexual delight. The two moral codes, mutually contradictory, are simultaneously offered as equally obliging and sacrosanct. excited and impelled to all kinds of sexual debaucheries, while at the same time threatened with character assassination in case he may practice them even to a modest degree, the anguished citizen reacts through a kind of intellectual breakdown, becoming a servile fool who no longer knows how to orient himself and who begs for a voice of command. The command can be empty and meaningless, as, for example, change, but when it is uttered, it always sounds like a relief. So, to bring this forward a bit, there's porn in the library, gratuitous, grotesque, disgusting porn with rape and sex toys and all kinds of things being given to children. And people engaging in acts, and there's threesomes, and there's this, and there's that. Okay. Now, obviously, put in front of children, most people think that's horrible. At the same time, we live in a world where we talk about freedom, we talk about adults being able to make choices privately and not have the government butt in and not have our neighbors butt into our bedrooms and tell us what to do. So just like in this scenario, you have this sense of moral indignation that these children, oh my God, what are they doing? But then in the next breath, you hear right-wing fascist extremist prudes clutching your pearls. What's wrong with you? Or so you've never watched porn enough, never looked at Playboy, sir, never done this, never done that. And the dissonance is so, like, well, wait, but those are adults, but those are children, but wait, this is bad, but this is okay. And whichever side you trend towards more, you look for that voice. This is the way. This is the side you should align with. Go here, do this. This makes you a good person. That makes you a bad person. And it really doesn't matter which argument you're making. The dissonance can be so crushing that you grab onto that voice of authority, that team identity. Makes it feel better, doesn't it? Now I'm a good person. Blaming scientists for this state of affairs is as idiotic as pinning the blame. Pinning the blame for murders on weapons. Men like von Bertalanffy. I apologize. I really do. Somebody can tell me how it's pronounced. Levin and Festinger created the instruments that can serve both the building up of tyranny and the reconquest of freedom. So science itself is not the bad guy here. Progress itself is not the bad guy. An openness to a broader range of gender norms, gender, sex roles, if you will, is not the bad thing in and of itself. We don't need to go all the way to get pregnant and stand barefoot in the kitchen. But it's tempting, isn't it? Because of that cognitive dissonance. And that's not even the tip of the iceberg. Okay, when we get to the AI, you'll see. They can serve they can serve tyranny or the reconquest of freedom. It is we who have the obligation of taking those weapons out of the hands of their monopolistic owners and learning to use them for the opposite purpose, freeing our spirit instead of allowing it to be enslaved. So look for more of that from me across the rest of this year. Look for more of that kind of thing of like, hey, what are you personally doing to empower yourself to take back these scientific developments, these technologies, these ideas, and put them to use for good? And resist the sacred voice from on high telling you this is the way. Ban the thing. Don't ban any of the things, whatever. In both cases, it is a lie. It's a temptation that if you fall for it, you are being socially engineered. It may feel to you like, no, that's what the left does. Only the left does social engineering. I hate to break it to you. It's not really a political thing. Social engineering is social engineering is social engineering. Very often, people will do it in response to it. Somebody's trying to get control over the people. I want control over the people. I'll just give them the opposite message. So be careful. Now, moving on to what exactly is the global citizenship thing, and more importantly, like, why is it? The best thing I've read to explain it to you comes from James Lindsay. I know you're shocked. And he did it by way of explaining critical immigration theory. It's what he's calling critical immigration theory, which he says will be the tool, the critical theory they're going to use to soften us up so we become these global, we're more receptive to the global citizenship concept. They serve each other. Okay, the article, I'm sorry. Let me cut to some of these chats, because I'm seeing some of you guys are saying, "Hey, wait. So, since you joined me live, I'm not going to race by this. Before I get into James Lindsay, let's go through some of this. Okay. First of all, hello to all of you lovely people. Thank you for being here. So Sophia says, chapter 4 of social justice fallacies probably relates to a lot of the stuff I've been saying, and also great quotes from Milton Friedman on that, meaning some of the things I was talking about. Yes, I can't recommend social justice fallacies enough. Please go read it, and always do your own research. If you're talking about, it says your homepage is out of order. If you're talking about the website, woke screen website, we've been having problems with it today. I'm not really sure, but I'm not sure what you were referring to, Sirens Bjorsa. So maybe you can clarify. No, I'm sure Thomas Sowell is not allowed in the research pack. In fact, I know for a fact he is not. And yes, Ego Brain, the media doesn't want you doing your own research. That is dangerous for sure. My student, I think, did feel good to share his concerns, Texas Sheep Lady, but as I said, it's 1 hour out of 1 day out of 1 week. And then you also mentioned that you've heard of global citizenship as far back as the 60s. I'm not surprised. This has been going on for a long time. A long time. Talking Story says you're not allowed or taught to critically think or deduce. Deduce is the key thing. When they use the term critical thinking in schools, if your kids' teachers are saying we teach them to do critical thinking, they don't mean, either induction or deduction. They don't teach them to do any kind of a thinking where I'm actually actively processing information. Critical thinking means thinking through a critical lens, which isn't really thinking. It's a lot more like emoting, but it's just viewing things through that critical theory lens of where's the power, where's the privilege, where's the power, where's the privilege, who's the oppressor, who's the oppressed. That's what they mean by critical thinking, not what you're talking about. And then let's see. You text Cheap Lady, what is the article you are reading? Please put the link in the notes. So let me get you that link, because you really should have this. And I've been advised to read pretty much everything by this gentleman when you can find it translated. Anyway, what I'll do is I will link it to, if I can get past the weird, goofy things that are in my way, blocking it. When it scrolls up, I'll pin it because I can't get to them. They've made it impossible for me to touch because there's an emoji thing there. So hopefully that will help you out. But I'm going to say it wrong again. Here we go. Carvalho is amazing. And my friend Christine Jones has read so much of him and covers his work on her X feed, Twitter feed, whatever. So you can also follow her if you're not following the Palmer worm. All right. So getting back to James, who has done a brilliant job, really, of breaking down critical immigration theory, which, of course, is the theory they're going to use to hammer home global citizenship. This is what he says. Hang on a second. Here it is. They're priming our kids for global citizenship. This will be at the heart of the incoming mass line around critical immigration theory, which they're staging now. Are you ready? Now, when he says staging, think about all of the people coming into this country across the border and then being sent off to different cities on airplanes and buses and so on in such numbers that, they're not going home. They're never getting deported. Let's just accept that. That's never happening. And nobody seems to have any intention of closing the border or even restricting the border. In fact, the Supreme Court just ruled against Texas, and now the Border Patrol has the authority to go in and cut out the wire. So even Texas couldn't protect itself. The federal government's in charge of the borders. They're asserting their authority, their power, and they're just letting people in. So there you have it. We've had millions of people come into this country. I think it's almost 3 million at this point. So, in the just I don't know if it's just the last year or last couple of years, it's an enormous number of people. This is part of it. Education for global citizenship. Summary. The emergence of a post-national citizenships questions the principles and values as well as the rights and responsibilities in which national citizenships were founded. Can you imagine that? Yeah, we're going to question the legitimacy of, having nations. Does this new reality, notice they call it a new reality, not fantasy on their part. This new reality reflect a crisis of classical liberalism or particularly of its neoliberal declination facing the new challenges of globalization and diversity? Made up stuff. The new challenges of globalization and diversity. These are only challenges because these people say they are. The free market was chugging along globally for a while without interference and without help, because that's what happens when you add new technologies. People will do business across oceans and large, geographic areas on their own. It's not some big challenge, or we don't need people to intervene. Thanks very much. Multiculturalism, one of the answers to the dilemmas of citizenship and diversity, shows signs of crisis. Again, only because people refuse to allow us to blend. Remember the melting pot? No, we're not allowed to do that anymore. We have to keep segmenting out into groups. In these concepts such as cosmopolitan democracies and global citizenship education have been invoked as solutions to the possible demise of the regulatory power of the nation state and failed citizenship. I'm sorry, who asked for this? Did you guys ask for this? Hey, citizenship is failing? No, governments are failing in their duty to protect nation states. They're disrespecting their citizens. But I was failing all of this. It's like, hi, we invented a problem and now we're going to talk about how to solve the problem we just invented. The implementation of the Global Education First Initiative, GEFI, in 2012 by the UN Secretary Ban Ki-moon, who has all kinds of his own resources, so he has no self-interest, of promoting this, no self-interest at all, is predicated as a resource to enhance global peace, sustainability of the planet, and the defense of the global commons. All figments of his and their imagination, right? Sustainability of the planet. SDG goals, sustainability, you've probably been hearing that a lot. This is supposedly connected. Somehow when we're global citizens, we'll do a better job of protecting the planet. Allegedly. All right. So getting back to where does he say about, he goes into more about what it looks like. Here we go. Let's take it apart. I keep saying critical immigration theory is coming. What's that going to look like? What's it going to do? When will it really drop? Let's think it through. And again, critical immigration theory, global citizenship, one serves the other. It's just a theory that upholds the other. Critical immigration theory is going to be a global reach extension of critical race theory, which is very American. So critical race theory is sort of American thing, but critical immigration theory is going to be the global one. The idea is simple. Illegal immigrants are oppressed. And we got to take the word illegal out, right? Because they're oppressed. And national citizens are oppressors through the system of national citizenship. So until we do the work of becoming global citizens, we will be oppressors. Soon as we call ourselves global citizens, maybe we can be unburdened. Maybe we might have absolution from the Holy See of the UN. And we will no longer be oppressors. Maybe. But then we have to go through the intersectional chart and say, oh, no, you're still white. Anyway, Communist Manifesto. Bourgeois and proletarians. The history of all hitherto existing society is a history of class struggles. Freeman and slave, politician and plebeian, lord and serf, guild master and journeyman, in a word, oppressor and oppressed, stood in constant opposition to one another, carried on an uninterrupted. It's communism. Guys, global citizenship, just another code term for communism, global communism. They couldn't spread it through their little Bolshevik tactics way back in the 60s all that well, just in the street. Wasn't going so well all by itself. And they couldn't really spread it to the United States or even some of the Western nations that had ceased to be super class conscious. We didn't have like serfs, millions and millions of peasants and then, a czar. Didn't really have that. So we were pretty tolerant of a little bit of income inequality because we had upward mobility. So you weren't going to get a lot of headway when you didn't have that sense of oppression. So we have to come up with new ways for people to feel oppressed, don't we? So specifically, illegal immigrants and national citizens will be framed in an intrinsic conflict where the illegal immigrants are held up as unjustly excluded from the benefits of national citizenship by the system of national citizenship itself. Never mind that we citizens have obligations that these illegals don't have. Like, they don't have to show a picture ID at the airport, apparently. Just, notify somebody that you'd rather not have your picture taken and you can be let on the plane. Meanwhile, my daughter's passport expired and it's like, we're going to need a pint of blood and some DNA and her expired passport for which you needed the social security card and, the birth certificate and all the things to prove that you're really an American and prove that you really, are who you say you are. That passport won't serve as picture ID for the new passport. So you better have something else. And the something else is going to need picture ID, but oh, too bad, so sad, your passport's expired. Yeah, true story. Anyway, in that it will be a critical immigration theory, the goal will be to find any pretext whatsoever to denounce the target, which is the system that it wants to change. See Horkheimer below. Anything that can stoke conflict to fuel that denunciation will be fed. This society in which we live does not immiserate the workers, but helps them to build a better life. And apart from that, Marx did not see that freedom and justice are dialectical concepts. The more freedom, the less justice. The more justice, the less freedom. You hear that? The more justice, the less freedom. Sorry, guys. We need justice, so you're going to have to suck it up and have less freedom. The critical theory, which I conceived later, is based on the idea that one cannot determine what is good, what a good and free society would look like from within the society which we now live in. We lack the means, but in our work, we can bring up the negative aspects of the society which we want to change. Yeah, pretty crazy. The goal of critical theory is to imagine a different system to replace the target system under denunciation. In this case, that new ideal system is clearly global citizenship, which is embedded in SDG goal number 4. So it is the fourth goal in the Sustainable Development Goals that are being pushed by the UN and the WEF, global citizenship. Global citizenship is the umbrella term for social, political, environmental, and economic actions of globally minded individuals and communities on a worldwide scale. How are we going to measure globally mindedness? Who gets to decide? I'm sorry, you're not globally minded enough. A little less freedom for you till you do the work. The United Nations is extremely invested in this global citizenship agenda and SDG 4, as even a casual investigation will show you. They have gobs of material. I'm going to show you some of it on it, including comprehensive plans to remake education around teaching it everywhere. Global citizenship, a new and vital force. Who said? Oh, they did. Did you get the memo? Were you asked? Did you vote on this, global citizen? See, isn't that funny? You're all by default going to be drafted into global citizenship, but you didn't get a say in any of it. So, just so you know. It's a weird kind of citizenship, isn't it? Where you don't actually have any say, any rights, any stakehold in it. Okay. What is a global citizen? It's a dangerous fabrication, like all of their ideas. It doesn't exist, but it sounds like someone who is part of humanity on the globe. A citizen is a person in a political relationship with a sovereign, including rights and duties. There is no global sovereign yet. But you can bet your bottom dollar there will be one as soon as we submit to the notion of global citizenship. The people who came up with this fabrication will be sure to appoint somebody. I have no doubt. Who might it be? Could it be
Klaus Schwab?
Anyway, or would you prefer it like this?
Klaus Schwab.
Additionally, global citizenship is a psyops to be put up against the naturally inferior national citizenship, in particular, which will be framed as antiquated, limited, problematic, and harmful. Just look at the migrant crisis it has created, for example. So, the United Nations pops up at the heart of critical immigration theory narratives, stand up for human rights. He goes on and on. There's so much here. I highly recommend that you go check out this thread. So to facilitate that, I'm going to put this link into the chat so you can grab it if you have an X account and you can go read all of it. There's a lot. There's a lot there. But I wanted to just get you started on the idea that it is connected to the immigration piece that is coming. If you criticize it, fight back against, what's going on, and you're just letting people in. How oppressive of you. But the only way that narrative works, that we citizens are oppressive, is if there's no such thing as a country. That citizenship itself is a kind of privilege. Forget all the obligations that come with it, like I said. No. It's just this extra special privilege. I wonder what the privileges will be of global citizenship. I wonder. Anyway, so moving on, I want to show you what the UN says you need to know about global citizenship education. As our world grows increasingly interdependent, GC Ed is more vital than ever. So our world grows increasingly interdependent. They're describing a phenomenon of reality that just is. It just is. Just because something is doesn't mean it needs to be controlled or managed or dealt with. That's something to note about the UN, the WF, all of these people who talk about these global ideas and global citizenship and, all of that. The social engineering they're doing to you through this language, and that's what it is. They're linguistically socially engineering you to use that false cause fallacy as your go-to thought process. The world is growing increasingly interdependent. Fact. Observable fact. So, global citizenship education is more vital than ever. Whoa! Hold the phone. Those two things do not connect. Just because A happened does not mean, that B is because of A or B is necessary because of A. No, but they want you to believe that. Look for this in everything you see. All the materials coming out of your school, everything. Look for, as this happens, this is important. As this is the fact of life, as more and more children identify as something other than their assigned sex, gender education becomes more important. Nuh-uh. Counseling. Mental health care, hitting the brakes hard and fast on whatever the heck we're teaching in sex ed, getting the kids off the screens and away from TikTok and Tumblr becomes more important than ever. I mean, those make way more sense than because this happened, this is more important than ever. We need to go and recognize and say the pronouns and do the things because this is happening. Or maybe this thing is happening because you're doing all of this. No, we don't talk about that. Maybe global citizenship education is coming to be and you're making it into a thing because you see an opportunity for your pet project, global communism, in what's already happening because of capitalism and freedom and technology and scientific advancement and human thriving. And ironically, the near eradication of persistent poverty across the globe, for 90% of humans. oh, look, everything is really, really good. Let's wreck it. I mean, that's really what they're saying. So be very careful with this kind of linguistic trick. For international solidarity and inspiring learners of all ages to positively contribute to their local and global communities. You don't have a global community. That is a nonsense term. How in the what? I don't want to be in community with the people in the next subdivision over. I barely want to be in community with the one I'm in. And it's not just because I'm antisocial. I choose my community very carefully. Hand pick the people I want to be in a community with. Everything else is just a network at best. And you can't really be in a network with millions and millions of people on the other side of the globe you're never going to meet, never speak to, etc. So this idea that learners, notice they're called learners, which in and of itself conveys that they're on the receiving end of this information. Remember, my student thought learning is just copying what other people tell you. That's what he's been told. I give you the information, you learn it. That's not learning. That's just programming, training, inspiring bots. Read it that way. Inspiring brainwashed people of all ages to positively, by whose definition, contribute. Why? Why are we obliged to do that? Why are our children the world over obliged to do any of this? Says who? But what exactly does global citizenship education entail? Why it matters today and how UNESCO is driving this movement. And then they go on, for centuries, common aspirations for mutual respect, peace, and understanding were reflected in traditional concepts across cultures, in civilizations, et cetera, et cetera. And then they just list a bunch of random stuff. I am because of who we all are, an African philosophy, but by building peace through education and reminding humanity of our common ties. UNESCO has long championed the idea, is now formalized as our world grows. And they say it again. That's another hallmark of this. We're going to say it again and again and again and again, because if we repeat it often enough, you'll think, well, it must be true. As our world grows increasingly interdependent, global citizenship education becomes more vital. Isn't it true? Sounds serious, sounds important. Break it up. It's not true. What's the idea? Unlike citizenship, special rights, privileges, and responsibilities related to belonging to a particular nation state, the global citizenship concept is based on the idea that we are connected not just with one country, but with a broader global community. Okay, it's a shitty idea. It's based on the idea that something imaginary exists that doesn't exist, that is even more abstract and harder to wrap our minds around, because it shouldn't be, than national citizenship. National citizenship is already a fairly difficult concept for most people to, wrap their minds around. But it's comprehensible because we can write down, all right, there's borders, and then there's, we within these borders have agreed to live by these rules and to order our society by these standards and have these rights and protect these rights and defend these borders and so on. So we've all agreed to that. And anyone who doesn't agree, if it's a free nation, you can leave. There's the door. Don't let it hit you on the way out. Bye. It's been nice knowing you. Go try your luck in another country that has different standards and different rules that their community wants to live by. And yay, you can pursue happiness somewhere else. Knock yourself out. By the same token, would you like to come here? Send us your wretched refuse, etc. Would you like to come here, check in at the door? You want to live by our rules? You want to be part of this nation and be one of us, right? Follow these same guidelines and respect rights and so on. Well, we're welcome to. That's great. That's very different from, I'm just going to walk across the imaginary line and just do whatever the hell I want. I'm not a citizen. I'm not obliged to any of your rules or anything. I get special privileges. In fact, here's some money. Here's a place to live. Here's, that all you guys pay for. Thanks. And I'm sure not every person has that attitude, but it doesn't matter. Our government has that attitude towards us, that they're going to give these people that on our backs and then put us in the unenviable position, remember that cognitive dissonance of saying, well, wait a minute, I support immigration and freedom to move around the planet and seek a better life. I'm not a heartless, cold individual, but I also respect the rights of, my rights, and I pay taxes, and then we have a border for a reason, and some of them could be criminals, and we're not even checking, and what the heck is going on? This seems really unsafe and stupid. Conflict. And if you're on the left, the big voice comes in and says, freedom from oppression, they're asylum seekers, and you're a bad person, but you're a good person if you say let them in. Okay, I'm a good person. On the other side, you're a good person if you firmly oppose this and you want razor wire at the border and you don't want anyone coming in and they're all deadbeats and horrible and you want them all deported tomorrow. Okay, that's the right way to be. It's very hard to navigate that place you're like, it's bad, but I'm sure there's some decent people in there, but I don't. Enter global citizenship. And what does global citizenship do? It makes it like, I have even more relief from this stress if you're a person without any capacity for reason whatsoever. So probably on the left, but there might be someone all the way on the right. I don't know. Possibly. It's not really political. Like I said, it has more to do with cognitive dissonance. How much are you suffering and whose answer makes the most sense to you? And what they want is for our kids, most of whom are basically, want to be good, to not have any comprehension of national citizenship. They'll never learn about it. They just go straight to global citizenship. So they'll never experience the dissonance that I feel, that you feel. They'll never feel it. They'll just feel like this is what it is. I'm a citizen of the world. What is the education about? Economically, environmentally, socially, and politically, we're linked to other people on the planet as never before. Says you. I don't think so. I don't think I am any more than I was before. If I want to be, maybe, but not automatically. With the transformations that this world has gone through in the past decades, expansion of digital technology, international travel and migration, economic crises, blah, 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 blah. How we work, teach, and learn has to change. Why? According to whom? Who decided this? I didn't get a vote. What? So this is how it goes on. And then there's more. So there's that. Then we have global citizenship education in the UNESCO context. There's even more. This is, education programs for the period 2014 to 2021. We have UNESCO's clearinghouse in global citizenship education. They're just going to blanket the globe in every classroom. Look, how many pages? All the articles, all the professional development for teachers to read. Ban Ki-moon, Center for Global Citizens. We envision that humanity is guided by global citizen leaders who care for people, planet, and prosperity. So does that mean I can't care for people, the planet, and prosperity, but be an American? And just be an American citizen? Can't do it? We were able to do it before. Why can't we do it now? What's the magic sauce that suddenly makes it impossible to taste freedom? So there's that. And now I'm going to show you a super creepy little video that explains what this is even more. Let me make sure that this is set up to, you should be able to hear the sound. Here we go.
Meet Adamu. He is a 6th grade student from a village in Kenya. Climate change worries him, and he wants to become a scientist to do something about it. Say hi to Nim. She's another 6th grader from an international school in Singapore. She loves numbers, and just like her cousin, she too wants to become an investment banker. But rising sea levels worry her. Nim wants to make sure that the work she does contributes to a sustainable future.
Can't she do that without being a global citizen? You see what they do? She wants this. They take individuals and they get you tied in with empathy to individuals who want, who need, who this, who that, somewhere on the planet. And then somehow we go from there all the way to global citizenship. Like, it's not possible for her to do important work that helps clean up the water or clean up the planet without global citizenship.
At UNESCO MGIEP, we aim to inculcate foundational competencies such as emotional regulation.
Emotional regulation. That's a big term you should pay attention to. I'm going to talk about that after this is over.
Self-awareness, empathy, compassion, and of course, critical inquiry, so that Adamu from Kenya and Nim from Singapore see themselves as global citizens. For the past 10 years,
the rest is just numbers. So they see themselves as global citizens. Now, why did I want to talk to you about about emotional regulation? Well, it's part of that social engineering thing. Remember, we've talked on the show about SEL and so on, which is also social engineering. We don't regulate our emotions. Let me repeat that. We don't regulate our emotions. We either choose the correct emotion to feel in a given situation, or we don't. The term emotional regulation is really just a code for suppressing your own feelings. They want you to regulate any feeling of discomfort that you might have. What they want, regulate that, suppress it. Because we don't regulate our emotions. I don't get angry and then go, okay, I'm going to modify my anger to be a 5 instead of a 10. That's not how it works. If you're a rational person and the situation calls for anger at a level 5, you're going to give a 5. You're not going to go, well, I want to do a 10, but then I'm going to pull it back to here. People say, well, but you count to 10. That's not emotional regulation. That's thinking. That's thinking. That's saying, probably better to de-escalate. That's thinking. The only situation where you would regulate your emotions is when you have one and it's not safe to have it. People who are in abusive relationships regulate their emotions. They suppress them. They subsume them. They shut them down. Or they fake them. Emotional regulation is what you do when you're being abused. Everybody else just feels or thinks, hopefully, an appropriate amount for this given situation. I'm reminded of a movie with Meg Ryan, happy, smile, sad, frown, use the appropriate expression for the appropriate feeling, right? And that's just feeling and thinking in concert appropriately in a mature and rational manner. It's not emotional regulation. It conjures up images of people who are just wildly irrational at all times, and all emotions are just free. Like this one's just going to go to an 11 unless I rein it in. That's not how people work. Mature, properly developed humans don't need to do that. You might need to count to 10 every once in a while so you don't have an outburst or something. But again, that's not so much regulating your emotion as thinking it through, thinking better of it, so to speak. They mean what they're saying. Don't feel deprived when we don't let you have your freedom. Don't feel sad when we tell you have to do this job and not that job. Don't feel angry when we take things away from you that were yours to give to somebody else. Regulate those emotions. Take them at their word. And I see here, Ego Brain says, take your soma. You're absolutely right. You're absolutely right. That's exactly right. That's exactly right. And Philip says, when your feet smell and your nose runs, you know that you're languishing in language. That's funny. Texas sheep lady. Well, Deb, they are being abusive. Yes, they are. And I'm not laughing like it's funny. This is the tragic comedy of it, is that they are fooling most people. Regulate your emotions. And so, as I said, people have these, pictures of toddlers screaming on the ground. Well, how's that working? Do you see what I see half the time? Adults who are arrested in their development. I talked to Josh Slocum about this just last week, who are sitting there in their cars having a complete temper tantrum because they have to go to work. Do we think they're going to be all, oh, I want to contribute to my global community, as they're sitting there screaming about having to work at all and demanding their UBI? You want to talk about cognitive dissonance? There's plenty over at the UN who clearly don't understand human beings, human nature, human anything. These people are the robots. Academic impact. This is where James got the global citizenship stuff. So I'm going to drop this in there for you as well. But yeah, emotional regulation. That's what that's all about. Then moving on, we have, this struck me as odd. It is the responsibility of civil society to experiment with models of effective global citizenship, to understand, care, and act on behalf of people and the planet through ecological and socially inclusive principles and practices. Really? Did you know that was the responsibility of civil society? Or what? I missed that memo too. And then they repeat it again. Inclusive principle. None of these words have any meaning. Global citizenship is transforming the worlds of art, business, culture, education, human and labor rights, religion, public health, politics, and our relationship with nature. Oh, yeah, I know. That's the problem. We don't want it to. Please stop. I actually don't really know anybody except the people on the inside of this who want it. I just don't get it. Another person who's been covering this a lot besides James is our friend Alexis, irrelevant stakeholder. We love you, Alexis. Biden and Obama both committed to Agenda 2030 on your behalf. We have to experiment on behalf of people. Oh, Biden and Obama thought so too. Your kids will learn to be global citizens and promote the 17 SDGs. There it is. Action on global development. Did you know this is September 2023? In 2015, world leaders adopted the Sustainable Development Goals as a roadmap for improving lives and well-being of people around the world. We didn't ask you. Y'all didn't vote on it. You didn't get any representation in this. We just signed you up to move towards not having a country anymore. But, it's all good. This week, the United States and leaders came together once again at the SDG Summit in New York to recommit to the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and the SDGs. They met at a time of both challenge and tremendous opportunity around the world. They met with years of evidence that when countries come together under a common development vision, they become tyrannical control freaks. I'm sorry, that's not what it says. The SDGs and Millennium Development Goals before them, they have the capacity to deliver for both people and planet. They can't fill the potholes. They can't do any of the things they say they're going to do. Healthcare is not affordable at all, despite something called an Affordable Care Act. And that's right here in the United States. So no, they can't deliver. And I'm certainly not looking to much less developed countries to deliver for me. In fact, I'm not looking to any country to deliver for me, not even this one, the one I am a citizen of. That's not what citizenship is about, to get things delivered. The only thing I want delivered is appropriate protection for my rights. That's it. And it's not so much delivery. It's more like, just do it. Do your job. Here she's got from the Pennsylvania Department of Education. So check your state. Go to your state's Department of Education. Put into the search box, Global Citizenship Education. See what you get. Okay. Go to your school district. Do the same. Just put in Global Citizenship. Global Citizenship Education, whichever you prefer. And you'll see some similar terms popping up, don't you? Equity, inclusion, and belonging. It's all part of the same thing. There it is, underlined in red. It's in the small print, but it's there. All of it is part of the same thing. Intersectionality too. Home education programs, homeschool policy updated with buzzwords lifelong learning and global citizens. And most people probably look right past it. They probably think it just means, yeah, I live on the planet. Okay. And that's not what it means. She's asking, I'd be interested to know how many other school districts have global citizens in their mission statement. And Haverford Township, the mission is to educate and inspire a community of lifelong learners who become well-rounded global citizens. Citizenship is in relation to a sovereign, as James said, living under a system of laws and rules and responsibilities and so forth. It is not citizenship. Otherwise, a global resident. Well, where else am I going to live? Mars? They mean it. They want your kids to think of themselves as not being Americans, which is why they don't teach civics. I mean, they do, but our test scores are like abysmal. And it's a show for another day, but I went through the civics test for 8th graders today at the Nation's Report Card, and I see the problem. It's very obvious why, but even in the civics test, there were 3 out of 19 questions were about the UN. For American students, the NAEP civics exam, the 19 test questions that they released for us parents and citizens and taxpayers to look at, 3 questions about the UN. What does the UN have to do with U.S. civics? I'll leave you to answer that question. And then there's the stuff that I showed you. So moving on. Now we're kind of transitioning into the social engineering. I've talked about it a little bit, but now I'm going to segue into like kind of how it happens and how they're connected. This person, Gabriela Ramos, is the Assistant Director General for Social and Human Sciences. Okay. Now, what does she do? What is her role? Gabriela Ramos is the Assistant Director for Social and Human Sciences of UNESCO, where she oversees the institution's contributions to building inclusive societies. She oversees the institution's contributions to building inclusive societies. That's pretty big. Her mandate includes tackling economic inequalities of income and opportunity and promoting social inclusion and gender equality. Gender equality. She also oversees the youth support agenda, promotion of values through sport, fight against racism and discrimination, and ethics of science, including of neurotechnology. Keep that in your mind when we start talking about the use of AI. And the Internet of Things. She has overseen the development and adoption of the first global instrument to promote the ethics of artificial intelligence, adopted by acclamation in 2021 by UNESCO's General Conference. She also launched the Global Forum Against Racism to catalyze the political support that member countries have given to this cause. On gender, she's advanced several initiatives, particularly to combat gender stereotypes and biases, except where they would contribute to, the goal of transitioning children. Then gender stereotypes are perfectly fine. We need to use those all the time, including in new technologies. She also leads the management of social transformations. The management of social transformations. MOST. What a cute little acronym. To help UNESCO member states strengthen the connection between research and policy and between knowledge and action, which is a fancy way of saying, how are we going to program all the people? Let's make some policies. Let's find the science that makes it easiest across the largest number of people. Let's craft some policies to make it law, and then let's do it. Let's do it. Let's program. Let's go. She has overseen the publication on inclusive and resilient societies, equality, sustainability, and efficiency. Do you think she's ever actually done anything or run anything real? Ever? Previously, Gabriela Ramos worked as a cabinet director and Sherpa for G20, G7, APEC, and OECD, contributing to increasing the OECD's global impact and leading key initiatives such as inclusive growth, new approaches to economic challenges, climate change and growth, the gender equality strategy, and work on well-being and children. At the G20, she contributed to the international reform for fair tax systems, the adoption of the gender quota to reduce the labor gap, and the establishment of the W20 and the adoption of the principles of artificial intelligence, amongst others. She also oversaw blah, 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 blah. I'm wondering what she's done besides this. Oh, wait. She's a board member of the Paris Peace Forum, the UNICEF Advisory Board, as well as the Lancet Commission on COVID and men's violence against women, a member of the whatever. I don't see jobs that indicate she understands how actual humans live and work, but okay. So there's that. Now, since we're on the topic of gender, and I know there are probably some people in the audience from Colorado who tuned in specifically for this, and I'm sorry I made you wait for so long to talk about your issue, which is very important. This is just one tiny little thing, one piece of legislation that is part of that social engineering project of how do we get the people to, break down the old order, the old system of, family, local community, state, country, etc. How do we break that down? Well, when we're talking about children, one of the ways is we separate them from their parents. We make them trust the establishment, the state endorsed or state funded established institution of the school and the people who work for it and so on. Put the trust there, break the trust with the parents bit by bit by bit. Create as many oppressed classes as we possibly can so they feel oppressed. And then they have that dissonance. They need the big voice to go over here, come over here. We're the good guys. And one of the ways they do that, obviously, is with gender. The gender theory, garbage. Remember we read about the Tavistock in the first essay? This is all by design. How do we break apart the old order? How do we break down these bourgeois notions of small, localized community, family, church, state, maybe countries as big as a person can imagine? How do we get them to think bigger, global? So, let me plug into them at somebody far, far away telling me what to do. Well, we have to break it all down and make them feel like they're part of some giant plan that's out there. So HB 1039, piece of legislation in Colorado, would require public and charter schools to unconditionally, that's the key word here, use students' preferred names and pronouns without parental knowledge or consent. Or it's discrimination. So if the school doesn't do it, if the teacher doesn't do it, they are discriminating. Kid comes in and says, I would like to be known as, mix Martian free creature. Who knows? Whatever. Mix instead of Mr. or something. Or Ms. They're non-binary. They have to do that. If they don't, it's discrimination. And their state senators are defending this. They're defending this. And I'm going to show you how they defend it. Let me find the exact words that this woman uses because it's pretty deplorable. All right. So Dan Gerke says, check out this exchange with Senator Marchman. I appreciate her willingness to reply. Her response is horrifying. She says, it's already law. Students can choose their preferred pronouns and names at school. This law just clarifies for all Colorado public schools, including charters. So remember, the charters are supposed to be part of school choice, supposed to be different, supposed to not necessarily be regulated. Remember all that? They're supposed to, be part of your choice. Now, the law applies to them too. They must follow the federal law. Did you know it's federal law? What happened to PURPA? What happened to FERPA? What happened to consent laws? Remember, children cannot consent. What happened to all the existing laws protecting children from agenda-driven adults, groomers, and others who would want to manipulate and exploit them for whatever purpose, global citizenship or just creepy real grooming? What happened to that? Poof, it's gone. Because Senator Janice Marchman thinks it's gone. because, it's already the law. Today, it is discrimination for schools to ignore preferred pronouns and names. I really want somebody to sue. If this thing passes, I want somebody to sue and challenge this absolute ignoramus. It's already law. No, it's not. No, it's not, ma'am. It's not federal law. What you have probably is an executive order. What you have probably is some Title IX language that's in there. You probably have some goofy stuff that you can tie back to like gender identity. You can't discriminate against gender identity. But now what you have to do is you have to get past the parents. You have to get past PURPA and FERPA, because that actually is law. You have to get this whole, I'm not telling the parents and I am not getting approval from the parents. These are minor children. Now, where she's not wrong is if the mom, the dad, the caregivers, everybody comes in and agrees that this little person that I just registered for school is a non-binary entity known as Tree. And even though the birth certificate says, Susie Smith, you need to refer to this non-binary creature as Tree because we said so. That they have to do. Or it would be discrimination. Yes. But the adults are involved in that. The adults are presenting this little person that way. If the child goes and says, I would like this, and they go to the parents and the parents say, oh, okay, fine, then it's also fine. However, if the child says, I want to be called, Tree, don't tell my parents. Now the school is allowing a minor child to consent to something they have no business to consent to around their parents. They could affect lots of things. It could be prescribed medications through the school in this new name. They'd be treated with this new name. And most importantly, they're being socially engineered and transitioned to be other than they were born, both in terms of their sex and how they think of themselves and how they think of themselves in relation to their parents. Can't tell mom and dad. Don't tell mom and dad. And she claims it's saving lives. Val says, what about when she calls adults dense? And she says, duh, of course not. Names are school appropriate because kids go by them. Changing names isn't a joke like you're making it out to be. Students' lives are at risk when adults are dense. Yes, they are, but you're the dense one. Students' lives are at risk when you put them at odds with their parents. Even if their parents really are, these highly intolerant people are going to freak out because their kid wants a different name. That might be one area where, a counselor or somebody wants to help work that out, because that kid has to go home every night. Or were you hoping they'd become homeless and go into the system? The kid still has to go home. They're going to go home and call the other name. You don't think that's going to cause some pain and anguish? So you're encouraging them to triangulate with you, the school. That's abusive. Voluntarily triangulating with a child and another adult, even in the same family, is abuse. But you're not part of the family, Senator. You're an outsider, and so are those teachers. So the adult who is dense is you, and everybody's supporting this law. You're encouraging confusion. You're encouraging mistrust amongst family members and the family members to the school. And you are socially engineering these children to believe that the state knows better than their family, knows better than they do about who they are and what they are. Because don't think this isn't being encouraged at the youngest age. What are your pronouns, little 6-year-old, little 3-year-old? You might not be what your parents said you were, because that's assigned. I promise you, in Colorado, they're doing that level of gender unicorn nonsense with the little bitty kids. So by the time the kid is saying, I want my name to be, and I want my this to be that, and the other whatever, and just write it in my documents, and I don't have to get mom and dad's approval. They've already been socially engineered to see themselves as adults, able to consent to these things. Do you know what would happen to society if this continued apace, where children get to tell adults to do their bidding and the adults can't say no, or it's discrimination? The adults can't make a judgment call. The adults can't intervene and say, think we need to call your parents. Think we need to get involved and have a little conversation so everybody's in the up and up. Everybody knows what's going on, and let's sort this out. You'll be protected, promise. We're mandatory reporters, so if your parents threaten you in any way, we'll be sure to call the authorities. You know how far that would go to getting kids who know damn well their parents aren't abusive to go, no, don't do that. But they don't even do that. Don't worry, we'll keep it a secret. We're not even going to ask if your parents are remotely abusive. We're just going to assume it's true. Because all parents aren't they? Especially those that might not want to know what you call it. There are kids who change clothes at school because they don't want their parents to see them wearing more risque clothing, and the school lets them do that. Your values be damned. Your standards be damned. It's okay. We'll take care of you. That's social engineering. What is the lesson being taught? And remember, they're agents of the state. They might think they're all just so loving and warm and we're just the best people ever. But they're agents of the state coming between parents and their kids and interfering in the proper care of those kids if they're confused or have some kind of dissonance that they're trying to resolve. All the kids at school are having these new cool identities and they're being celebrated. They have flags and pins and clubs to go to, and I don't, and I feel a little left out because I've got my sibling is doing this great stuff and I don't know, and it's a cry for help. I don't know, but my parents will never hear the cry for help because the school is just going to take me on down the path of socially engineering me to be the little global citizen of a brand new invented gender that they want me to be. So this is insidious. Like I said, it's one piece of legislation, but that's its purpose. And then multiply this across dozens of similar laws that separate parents from their kids in school. I'm sure in Colorado and as well as other states, they've got other either pending legislation or existing legislation about healthcare decisions going on at school and about what kids can and can't consent to as far as just even seeing a counselor without their parents being in the room or even being notified. Because states that do this, do that too. And we all know about the community school and things like that where they're putting medical facilities right in the school in California and other places. So I'm going to go back to the chat because I've seen that that Val is here. Yeah, Ego Brain, I said this, come up with the most ridiculous names and pronouns, change them every day, overload the system. That would be subversive and great. And I think Val likes the idea as well. So yes, I'm assuming, Val, when you say chaos, this is in response to me saying, imagine what would happen if we had to just default to what the children tell us to do. Otherwise, it's discrimination or it's somehow creating some kind of oppression. We can't do that. That's Lord of the Flies. What next? What do they get to tell us next? I can't do homework because I don't have arms. But you have those aren't arms. Those are my tree limbs. But you have If they can say a penis isn't a penis and breasts aren't breasts, they're female, not male. They're male, not female. Look, I cut off the parts. I'm no longer a female, right? So what next? I'm gonna cut off their arm, pretend they don't have arms, bind their arms behind their back. I can't do my homework anymore. I can't type, I can't write, I can't do it, so I'm not doing it. What else? How far is this gonna go? How much absurdity? Where do we draw the line? And how do we say, well, those are obviously arms. I hate to break it to you. That's obviously an Adam's apple too. Or that's obviously a guy in the girl's bathroom with a penis. I mean, where does that's obviously X begin and end? When Janice Marchman says, they can change their name whatever they want. We don't need to tell parents. We need to just let them do what they want. That seems extreme. And the reason I say that is not because I think no child ever, as I said, if it's, the parents have said, look, our child is going through a thing. The birth certificate says X, we registered for school, so forth, but the name now that we're using is, please abide by that. Of course. You do follow the parents' lead, follow the family, just follow the lead. And I'm not suggesting for a minute that we interfere with that or whatever care they're giving, even if I disagree with it, even if I think the parents are loopy. Not my business. That's their kid. But that is exactly why I don't think the school should get involved, because it's not their business. They shouldn't be doing it without the parents knowing. So that's social engineering. Social engineering is when we take parenting, which should be a parenting responsibility, and we put it into the social space, which school is. That is a social space, and it's state run for most kids. Anything where they just make a blanket policy, they make a law, this is what we're going to do, and it serves the purpose of confusing the children, creating dissonance, not just for those kids. Remember that the dozen or a couple dozen kids who play along with this and do this nonsense are not the whole problem. What's the lesson for the other kids? What is real and what is not? Who's in charge and who is not? What matters and what doesn't? Who's the boss? Who makes the rules? What it becomes very confusing for them. And then, of course, they have to abide by these new names too. And if one of those children decides they're going to change their name every other month, then the peers and everybody else is going to be discriminating or get in trouble if they don't use the right name or the right pronouns. It's a minefield. And that too is part of the social engineering. Go with it. Train your brain to think in this absurd way and respect something completely insane, or you will not be part of this community. You will not be helping to sustain the community. You're on the outs. You're other, like my student. Use the evidence pack, and if you don't ask questions. You can't win unless you say the things we want you to say. You can't win unless you say the pronouns. You can't be in good standing. Sound familiar? So the way they'll edge our children closer and closer to the global citizenship is they'll just keep putting up situations for them to be confused, have dissonance, feel uncomfortable, look for the voice or listen for the voice, listen for the command, to take it away, to make it okay, follow the command, do the thing. Okay. Make everything else bad. Everything else. But like I said, it's not going to be just one way. There is going to be another voice commanding possibly the polar opposite of what UNESCO and the left and whatever they're. I don't want to know what that looks like. Or it could be the same place. It could lead back in a circle. I don't know. But it's not, liberty and freedom over here and crazy people over there. Doesn't work like that. We have to interrupt this at the individual level to stop the social engineering. Now, where does the generative AI fit into this? Where does that fit in? Why did I even bother to bring this up? Well, as you know, generative AI, things like ChatGPT and so forth that, gobbles up information, data, stuff about things, pictures, blah, 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 information. And then allows humans to ask questions, do research, create art with it. So it generates. I don't like that word. I think Kieran's right. It just, regurgitates, reproduces, reassembles things that it has digested and spits them back out in a different form. That's all it does. It doesn't really generate. Generate would mean it like created something new. It doesn't. It takes existing things and then it feeds them back out to you according to, formulae. But where it fits in is that it's being used in schools in part because the schools can't keep it out. It exists. Kids are using it, ChatGPT, to do their homework and so forth. They know they can't keep it out. It's kind of there. It's like social media and computers and those things. It exists now, so it's coming to school. And to make it look like they're responsible, many states are coming up with plans and guidelines for here's guidance and how to use the AI in your school. So a lot of parents are reassured, oh, this is good. This is good. We can't put the toothpaste back in the tube. The AI is going to be in education. It's going to be in the schools because the kids are going to bring it in, or it's on the Chromebook. It's on the phone. There's not much we can do. But good. The school's going to put together a policy so that, they'll define how, what's the right way to use it. Not so fast. Remember, they're defining when a kid can change their name. They're defining all kinds of things, like what a healthy, nutritious lunch is that isn't. So do you really trust them to be the ones to decide what an appropriate amount of generative AI is, or when and where and how to use it? I don't. And I don't think you should either. So first, in case you're wondering what the most popular use cases are for generative AI in education, somebody's put together a list for 2024 of what they think the top use cases are, like what people are going to use it for. Personalized lessons. So they can, they say they're going to ensure that students receive the most effective education tailored specifically to their needs. How does the AI know? Says they're generated by using AI-powered algorithms to analyze student data such as past performance, their skills. That's pretty vague. And any feedback they might have given regarding content. Hate it, boring. So the idea is, and it's very seductive, that AI-based systems can leverage this information, generate customized curriculum and there's that linguistic trick again, customized. And parents hear better. It's custom, must be better. It's like a bespoke suit. Well, but what if the bespoke suit is made out of really scratchy polyester? What if it's made out of plastic wrap? Okay. Suddenly the fact that it's bespoke is like, oh, okay. Yeah. Not so fun. Not so good. Okay. So customized all by itself doesn't make it better. And in fact, customize isn't even necessarily the right word. It's more like responsive to whatever was input from the kid, which could have nothing to do with reality. You ever seen kids use some of these programs? Sometimes they're like, because they're bored. Sometimes they accidentally hit the wrong key and give the wrong answer. Sometimes they want to do the lesson over and over again. So they go very, very slowly and they know it's going to make them do it again because they don't want to advance. They want to get them all right. So they just go through very slowly. Kids are still little individual humans and they're pretty clever at outsmarting the system and how it works and figuring out how to game it. So the data that goes in may or may not spit back out something that they actually need to learn. The assumption that it does is false. So there's that. Hey, it's customized. Okay. Speechify is generative AI tool. It offers text to speech, speech to text, etc. This it's especially useful for children with learning disabilities. Yes, no question. There are AI tools that can help kids with very specific learning disabilities, but as with everything that has ever helped a kid with a learning disability, nothing education loves more than to just generalize it across the whole population. That's where Lucy Calkins' whole word came from. It was created for deaf children who couldn't hear phonemes. So we have whole word memorization and learning. Worked pretty well for deaf children, certainly better than phonics because can't hear letter sounds. But doesn't work so well for kids who can't hear. So you don't give crutches in a wheelchair to people who can walk and then wonder why they don't help them walk better. Generative AI tools can help design and organize course materials. This is probably going to be the thing it's used for the most, because what is most likely to happen is that teachers and or curriculum developers are going to just use these computers to spit out, design me a course to teach and the computer's going to go, here you go. The teachers don't have to think anymore. Now you have to depend on whoever wrote the algorithms and fed the information into the generative AI, fed it material that you'd actually want spit back out into a lesson. You okay with that? Don't do your own research. Here's the evidence pack. Sound familiar? Pretty soon, generative AI will just give the debate pack. You don't even have to go to a human for it. Give me my evidence pack to debate UBI. Thank you very much. Now I need my evidence pack to debate climate change. Thank you very much. Okay, please give me the talking points for it. Think it might be able to do that? Pretty sure. Same with content creation for courses. And so on. Data privacy protection for analytical models. One advantage of using generative AI to create training data sets is that it can help protect student privacy. A data breach or hacking incident can reveal real-world data containing personal information about school-age children. Using synthetic data, which is created by AI models that have learned from real-world data, can provide anonymity and protect students' personal information. In theory. Except we know that when they go into school and they get their little Chromebook and they set up their email and they set up all their logins, every single thing they do in K-12, because the government mandates it for their long-range data collection, which is one of the only things that the Department of Education does besides hand out money, it's tied to their student ID. And that data can be tied back to that individual child. They'll tell you all day long. It likely won't be. We can't see a situation where it will be, but it can be. It's like when they sat there and told you that, it doesn't matter that we're listening in on all of your conversations, like Edward Snowden said we were. I can't imagine any reason we would want to go back and check what you said on, a week ago last Tuesday. Okay, but you can. And that's the problem. Same thing with your kids' information. Restoring learning materials. Yes, they can, make things clearer. Certainly, there's great uses for that. I'm going to show you what my state came up with. They released a guidance for the use of AI in schools. And, there have been different responses. Some people have said, oh my God, this means they're going to put AI in every class. Maybe, probably, but that's not the thing that alarmed me right out of the gate. They're coming up with guidelines. It's probably better than not having any guidelines at all, but, maybe we should read through them and see what they say. So, they have some, evaluate, verify, edit, take a look at what you're doing. That seems to make sense. All right, good. So then I went and I looked more closely at the Department of Public Instruction. Oh, look at the little wheel. That looks very similar to SDG, doesn't it? And then we go through and, I'm scrolling. Wait, what? I got to this. And then I knew it was all bogus. So I encourage you to go look at your state, see if they have guidelines, and then look through them. Appropriate use of Gen AI in the classroom. Education without AI. Look at the way it depicts education without AI. Can you guys see this? Look at this. Like riding a mountain bike, the human is in control, but also has no assistance. Sometimes the struggle inhibits learning. How did we ever manage, y'all? How did we manage without AI in the classroom? The struggle was real. So I have a problem with that. I want tech out of the classroom altogether. I want phones gone. I want one-to-one tech devices gone. I want to bring back books and paper and pencil, absolutely through 5th grade, preferably through 8th grade. And maybe in high school, you start bringing in some tech. Maybe after they're absolutely proficient at the, old style way. Because it is better. It is superior in terms of your retention and ability to integrate the information that you are learning, vastly superior to learning things using tech. There's evidence galore that shows that. But, okay, Oren says, sometimes the struggle of biking inhibits leg muscle growth. Okay. I can't speak to that. I'm not an expert at mountain biking, but I don't know that the analogy really fits with learning. I don't think that trying to go to school without AI is too much of a struggle. I just don't. Like riding a motorcycle, you can go really, really fast, but it's unpredictable and can even be dangerous. Too much reliance on AI. That's one analogy. You can go too fast. It's unpredictable. It definitely can be dangerous. But I don't know if you can go too fast. I think you can be lazy and you can not really learn anything. The machine's doing it for you. You become very passive, externally motivated, and I guess that's dangerous. But again, I think this analogy is just really stupid. This reminds me of the kids standing there in front of the wall watching the baseball. There's something about these people they cannot analogize to save their lives. Using AI as a learning partner, like riding an e-bike. So it's an electric bike. So we're not even getting any exercise now. At least they admit that. Like riding an e-bike, the human is totally in control, but the e-bike can reduce the struggle. They're calling it a struggle. They're calling learning struggle a problem. A little bit of struggle in learning is actually good. How much, how little, that's debatable. I was reading last week that somebody said, and I kind of agree, that getting the right answer about 80%, 80 to 85% of the time is probably, enough to keep you motivated, but 20% of the time not enough to keep you also motivated to try to learn more. If you got the right answer 90, 95% of the time, it's too easy. You're either going to be bored or you're not challenged enough. Less than 80% of the time getting the right answer, you're probably get frustrated and maybe want to give up. But you can ride a bike on the flat ground and pedal it yourself. My goodness, you can't even pedal it. It's too much of a struggle. You need AI because anything without AI is too much of a struggle. That tells me all I need to know about North Carolina and their approach to AI. Oh, learning is too hard without the help of artificial intelligence. So I'm a little concerned. But there's no question that AI is, AI, quote, skills are in demand. Amazon has an initiative to give scholarships and free AI courses to people. So they're pushing it. Big corporations are pushing this, which is probably what's pushing some of these government entities to want our kids all immersed in AI. And, so on. Oren says he was being sarcastic. I thought so, but I'm never sure. That's what makes it stick. Yes. And then, there were no brilliant thinkers before AI, don't you know? That's what I thought. Where were they all? How did they function? How did Einstein come up with his theories without AI to help him out? So Amazon is pushing this, but you know what I find ironic, and I thought I'd bring this up because I thought it was super funny. Generative AI, if you're unaware, uses an enormous amount of energy. It has a huge, huge carbon footprint. I'm not going to read all this to you because I've already read to you too much today, but it uses a ton of power. The exact energy cost of a single AI model is difficult to estimate and includes the energy used to manufacture the computing equipment, create the model, and use the model in production. In 2019, researchers found that creating a generative AI model called BERT with 110 million parameters consumed the energy of a round-trip transcontinental flight for one person. It's gotten even worse. Then we have, the AI boom because it uses shocking amount of electricity. So much for that Green New Deal and being green. We want everyone to be on AI. We want to use this to do our social engineering, to get everybody feeling like any kind of learning struggle is too much struggle. That's part of the social engineering, you guys. Change your attitude towards learning. Learning shouldn't be hard. Working shouldn't be hard. Nothing should be hard. That's called struggle. And anybody asking you to struggle is oppressive. So anyone asking you to work is oppressive. Your employer's oppressive. It's all oppressive. UBI, here, have some. Are you starting to see how it works? We socially engineer everybody to be extremely passive and weak and sort of mindless and not know how to think and not want to think for fear of being either ostracized or feeling uncomfortable because it's struggle. And then we tell them, you're a citizen of the globe, you're a global citizen, and these are your obligations, and this is your job. So they don't have the capacity to fight back. They're plugged into the matrix. Tell me where to go, what to do. Tell me I'm a good person for being a good follower. Plug me in. It's all good. And if I don't like it, well, then I'm sure they'll have an AI to correct for that, won't they? So this is all part of it. They'll tell you we're going to regulate it. We're not going to use it too much, but it's a struggle if we don't use it. And then, like I said, the energy consumption thing I thought was just funny. So what to do with all this? Well, like I say all the time, recognize it when you see it. If you're out in Colorado and you've got this law, and you fight it. It's ridiculous. It's absolutely ridiculous. And if it's hard to fight it, to just defeat it because you're getting that whole "you're a bad person" argument. You hate kids. You just want kids to commit suicide, whatever other BS they're throwing at you. Put it back in their court and say, why is this law necessary? How many kids do we really have? No, give us some numbers. How many kids do we have in the state of Colorado who have been denied the opportunity with their parents, cooperation and consent to change their name from what that says in their birth certificate, or just to make up a name mid-year that's a totally different name and to have that be their name at school? How many kids have been denied that? Okay. And so why can't you deal with that on a case-by-case basis? Why do we need a law that makes it into this thing where, if you don't do this, it's discrimination? If they say, well, this charter school doesn't want to do it because of bookkeeping and this and that and there. And why is that? Why are you saying that's a problem? Maybe their argument is legit. Maybe the administrative costs for changing names constantly is high. Who knows? Why do you need a law to normalize this and make it so that all the kids, anytime, any day, for any reason, without parental knowledge or involvement, can do something like this? And they might come back and, why do you care? What's it to you? What difference does it make? Well, it makes a difference because I actually care about the moral hazard of telling children they get to dictate to adults something like this. There's a difference between asking politely and working with adults to make something happen that is deeply important to you, and demanding. And I'm concerned that we are teaching a generation of children to stomp their feet and make demands, and we write laws to boss adults around to do their bidding. And it's this today, what's it going to be tomorrow? I think it's a bit heavy-handed. That could be your answer. It has nothing to do with hating kids or not wanting kids to be called what they want to be called. I have infinite respect for parents and parental rights, and it should be between the parents and the kids and then the school. I also don't think you should be triangulating. Put it to them like that. Why do you want to come between parents and their children? How many individual cases do you have where you know for a fact the child is in danger? And if they are in danger, why have you not reported it to the authorities? That is your job. You are mandatory reporters. You don't need a law to protect you from having to do your job of mandatory reporting of abuse. In fact, you shouldn't have a law that protects you from that. So the jig is up. We're on to you. It has nothing to do with abuse. It has nothing to do with any of the things you say it has to do with. And it has everything to do with empowering children to dominate their parents and to see you as the good guy and parents as the bad guy. And for the students who aren't in the change my name game, for them to see how powerless they are and how many eggshells they have to walk on in the new world order in order to be okay in the eyes of the state. It's social engineering, and we don't want it. And as far as global citizenship, same thing. I'm not political, and I'm not trying to make this channel into a political thing, but we are coming up to an election season. Weigh these things out. Which are the candidates who are telling you that, you're a global citizen? Which are the ones that support this kind of nonsense at the national level and sign us up for things like UNESCO and the WEF and send our representatives off to Davos and so on? Maybe don't vote for them. Just a thought. And then to the extent possible, do not comply yourself. If you have to go to some training and they tell you to go through things, whether it's at work or don't do it, or just disagree. Fight back. If you're in a position to do so, file a lawsuit. Civil rights violations. Nobody can make you say things. If you're, they say you have to make a diversity statement, you have to write an equity pledge, or you have to, commit to global sustainable development goals, whatever, in order to take this job. If it's a government job of any kind, file a lawsuit. compelled speech, loyalty oaths, things like that. We have laws to protect us from that. Now, in private enterprise, go work somewhere else. Protest, write a bad review. But do what you can to not comply. You're not a citizen of the world. You're a resident of planet Earth. That's it. But you didn't choose that. It's not like you have another planet to go to. And you don't have any specific obligation to that, legal or otherwise. You have obligations to yourself. You have legal obligations as a citizen to your country. And nobody gets to just write some stuff on the internet and take that away from you. Teach it to your children. They're not doing it in school. They're not teaching civics in school. Not at all. What they're teaching is a bunch of gobbledygook. It's nonsense. In fact, even in the civics test that also mentioned the UN, they had videos where the kid had to watch a little video. This is an 8th grade test. Watch a video, one of Barack Obama and one of Mitt Romney, and then say, what each person said the role of government was, like that made it true. These are campaign videos in a civics test. People on the campaign trail make claims about what government is for all day long that it isn't for. It's not what's written down in the Constitution. And so, therefore, they were, in the course of this exam, which tells you what they were teaching in the material, they were teaching the kids that because Barack Obama said that a purpose of the federal government is to create programs that, make society a better place, or whatever the wording was, that makes it true. That was one of the selections. That was one of the correct answers. What does Barack Obama say the role of government is? Okay, but this is a civics test, not a what does Barack Obama think test. Nowhere in the test or in the materials did it say, and he's wrong, or that's his opinion. That's a political opinion. That's not a fact. Now, you can vote for that political opinion, but don't call it civics. That's politics. And that's what they're teaching our kids. So if you want your children to understand what their rights actually are, you might want to teach to them. There's a reason that our results are so low. I think it's something like 13% of graduating seniors are proficient in civics. And if it's the civics they're teaching that I looked at today, that's not good news either. And PS proficient is 75%. Is your score. A C is proficient. A 50% is basic. So we're below that. And for the first time since 2018, they were flat before that, but just so you know, 2018, gone down significantly. So if you don't want the global citizenship thing, you're going to have to supply this on your own. It's not happening in the school. Get the word out to your friends, your neighbors, your fellow parents, whatever else they're teaching in school. They're not teaching your kid how to be a citizen of this country. So it's going to be super easy to socially engineer them into believing that they're citizens of the global community. And that's very dangerous for the reasons I've given you tonight. Now, you can disagree, but that's my take on it. So one last peek at what we got in the comments here. Sao Sophia says, one thing on the energy use of AI doesn't compare to the supercomputing for quantum physics, uber complex economics models, and others. Yes, but I would prefer to use the energy for those than making cutesy pie little cartoons of myself as an anime character. Even though that was kind of fun to do one time, I don't think that's where we should be using our power. The proliferation would be a huge matter, but yes, and it is proliferating like crazy. And it's gobbling up copyright protected work too, which should concern us all. Oren says, if the AI fails, there's always the gulag. Don't laugh. That's probably where some of us are going to end up. T Secret Squirrel, is it okay to eat spam? I don't know. Maybe. It depends if it's made out of crickets. Probably it is. The walls are closing in on me at the office. I may have to actively resist soon. Ought to be interesting. I don't know where you work, but best of luck to you. DEI, Bob Dobalina says DEI statements are a consideration in college admissions. They are. Those of you who don't know me too well or you're new to the channel, I do tutor college-bound seniors. I help them write their essays. And they've gotten really clever about how they get around the affirmative action stuff. Now they can't do that anymore. They put it in the essay prompts. And very often what they're asking is something about diversity and how have your unique, diverse experiences, your ethnic experiences, your family's culture, impacted your view on life and so forth and so on. And it kind of works its way into there. What will you do to promote equity in the community? Things like that. Compelled speech is poopy. Yes, it is. Cyrus Fia says, I don't disagree. There are better uses for the energy. And that's my only point. I believe it or not, I'm not as concerned about the consumption of energy for the generative AI in and of itself. It's more that it's in contradiction to what they're teaching our kids. Go home and shame your parents because they're still driving a fossil fuel, fired vehicle. Because you turn the heat on in the winter and you use the air conditioning, and they'll go home and shame your family for their horrible energy consumption. But let's use ChatGPT to write all of our essays. It's the contradiction when you're perfectly capable with a freaking pencil of struggling through the writing of an essay. Somehow I typed on a typewriter, old-fashioned manual typewriter, until I got an electric typewriter, and that was considered a luxury. And that took me all the way through to senior year of college when we had one of those little Macintosh computers, and I had to go to the Mac lab at college to use it. I didn't own one. And then I went to grad school, and it was this big deal that I got to buy my very own little Macintosh. The screen was like 8 inches. I'm not even kidding. It was so tiny. And had a dot matrix printer, and I thought I was so high tech. I could actually now type my essays every night. But somehow I made it through with paper and pencil, manual typewriter. I don't know. We managed. Didn't need ChatGPT to write my papers for me, or even come up with my topics or do my research. Lots of people fighting back against DI statements. Yes, please, everyone, fight. Just challenge it. And people are like, well, what do I say? Just say, I'm not doing it. Well, you have to do it. Why do I? Because this is part of our policy. Why is it? Because this is how we know. No, I can treat people just fine without making a written statement to any effect. Am I doing anything wrong? And then if they still don't get the hint, then you start coming at them with things like lawsuits, civil rights, discrimination, compelled speech, etc. Separating children. Oh, wait, because cobalt batteries charged with coal plants are much better for the environment. Oh, you're killing me. Yes. Texas Sheep Lady, separating children from parents prepares for MAP, folks. Yeah, so MAP is minor attracted persons or people. This is their euphemism for pedophiles. But believe it or not, Texas Sheep Lady, that is true. But I don't believe that's the motivation of most of these people. Some of them, yes, for sure. But most, I think they genuinely walk the earth believing that parents are oppressive. I think that teaching right now attracts a disproportionate number of people who have mommy and daddy issues or just, I don't know what their problem is. They just have some kind of animus towards parents. And maybe they have chosen to go into the field in part because it gives them back some sense of control they didn't have when they were growing up or something. But considering that most millennials, most of the generation grew up with very permissive parents, very, affirming parents who negotiated every last thing with them and rarely said no. I'm struggling to understand the psychology. I would love for someone to do a study as to like, why do so many teachers today who are young, I'm not talking about people who are older generation, et cetera, they don't seem to have this problem. Some do. I'm sure there's older teachers with mommy, daddy issues, but the majority of these are sort of millennial and younger and Gen Z type, older Gen Z teachers. Why is it so easy for them to believe that parents are assholes? Like across the board. Is it because they just didn't have a lot of interaction with their parents? Is it because their parents ignored them and sat on their phones all day? Like, or were their parents weak and gave in to their every whim? I'm really trying to understand where they get this idea, because I had an actual asshole parent, like for real, abusive, terrible mother. Okay. And my dad was good. He was kind of emotionally absent, but a good parent when he was around. I was Gen X. So, but even I didn't grow up thinking I went to teaching. I didn't think parents are all assholes. Like, because I had an asshole parent, I had plenty of friends who had asshole parents and neglected them. They smoked in the car with the windows all the way up. They drank too much. They stayed out all night. They did stupid. I was Gen X. We had some interesting parents. But nobody I grew up with had this general idea that all parents were oppressive or all parents were jerks or whatever. We might not have liked ours, but we just didn't generalize like that. What is it about today? Does anyone have any ideas? I'm just kind of wondering why they would have all, not all, but so many find it so willing to believe. Let's see. Oren says they grew up with the meme of the strict, bigoted, conservative, authoritarian Christian. Well, that would explain an attitude towards parents who are outwardly, Christian, but not all the parents who want to be told that their kid changed their name or their pronouns are Christian. In fact, a fair number of them would consider themselves left of center, Democrats, gays against groomers. Some of them are parents. They're gay parents, and they don't like any of this stuff. They don't want this stuff with their kids in their schools. So they don't fit that meme. So like, what is it? Do they genuinely believe that the only people who wouldn't go along with this fit the meme? And then why do they turn on gays against groomers when it's like, hey, we're gay, and we're against groomers and we don't want this forced stuff with our kids. And we don't want you socially transitioning them and socially engineering them. And then what they'll do is say, well, you're just Nazis. But what? So the social engineering of those people has already worked, I think. If your cognitive dissonance, the stuff we described before, where you're sitting there going, wait, gay person doesn't want me talking to kids about LGBT stuff in kindergarten, doesn't want me asking about pronouns. That's what Christian fascist type of people do, but they're gay. But what? Dissonance, I don't know what to do. So then what? They turn to UNESCO? Those are bad people? We're doing a good thing? They turn to what? The district? They turn to their supervisor? Who is it they're turning to? And how is it that they're so weak? And maybe that's what it is. It's a self-selection process. So the people who last in education with the UNESCO directives coming down from the top and through Columbia University, University of Pennsylvania, Harvard, all these schools, the ones who last and don't run screaming from the building are the ones who were already socially engineered in their own schools to choose the state, choose the PhDs, choose anything with UN in front of it to silence the dissonance in their soul when they feel like, wait, that person might have a point. No! I'm starting to think Moms for Liberty makes sense. Give me some more UN. Is that what's going on? Maybe. Let's see. Texas Cheap Places, LOL, type papers weren't allowed when I went to university. Everything had to be written by your own hand. When I was overseas, my junior year in college, they all had to be written by hand. That is a fact. And I had to write them in German. And then you also said that, yes, they're angry at their parents because they were told they could do anything they want. Now, that's a really good point. I hadn't thought of that. That was the generation that was told, do all the right things, and the world is your oyster. You can be anything you want. OPS, you can wait to have kids. You don't have to get married. You can have it all. You can, have a great career, make lots of money, and have, later get married, do this thing. And they're maybe waking up to the reality that no, they can't have it all. They couldn't even have one of the things that they wanted. It was a lot harder than they thought. They weren't going to graduate and have a house day one. Maybe there's a lot of disappointment. They were, potentially sold a bill of goods. I felt that a little in my 20s. I wasn't ever explicitly told, get good grades and you'll have everything. But I did get the impression if I was a good kid and got good grades and went to a good college and went to a good grad school and came out with degrees and went out into the world, that I would be fine. I would be successful, that it would be less of a struggle. I'd be the kid on the e-bike, that my college degree and my master's degree would be like my e-bike. It's not AI, but it would be like the same thing. It didn't work out that way. It was a big struggle, a really big struggle. And I'm not going to lie, I was a little frustrated. I felt like I was kind of lied to by the adults, but I didn't blame my parents. And I didn't even blame like all adults. I just kind of felt like they probably should have been a little more realistic. They probably shouldn't have sold college like it was the greatest thing since sliced bread, which is where some of my anti-college, sense comes from now. Like, be skeptical, because I wasn't, and that was back then. But that's about it. After that, I just got busy getting on with life. That doesn't seem to happen now. They stay stuck in grievance a lot longer. Let's see. And Oren says, yes, but it makes a better narrative for their main character syndrome if the parents are like that. You're right. That's true. If they, in their imaginary world, in order to justify what they're doing, making the parents bad does feel better. They don't have, again, that dissonance of, there's the parents. It's not my kid. I'm doing this thing they probably don't like. No, it's because they're bad. I'm absolved. You're right. This probably happens really fast without them even knowing about it. And that's part of the social engineering too. How do we train the person's brain to make up an excuse for the thing they're doing that someone else doesn't like? And not only make up an excuse very quickly, but make up an excuse quickly that has social credit. And I see people, like, you can literally see their little brains working, like a ding, 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 tick, tick. Answer. Soundbite. Well, you're a Nazi. Well, you're a bigot. Well, I'm doing this because I'm a good person. Well, I care about kids. Well, I don't want them to die. What? They have all their little pat answers, but you can almost see the vacant look in their eyes as they search their little database, their own personal chat GPT answer. Titled, so this is an article, Teachers' Beliefs About Parent and Family Involvement, Rethinking Our Family Involvement Paradigm, in 2006. Well, I can't wait to read that. And then TC, which Girl says, it's like an extreme novelty bias. Gender is so fresh, so radical, and so rebellious. It's the new romantic cause. That is definitely part of it, for sure. And there are a lot of little sort of do-gooders who think they're saving kids and they're being the best buddy and all this junk. So yeah, so there's that. Well, I didn't really do this all justice. There's such huge topics, but what I hope I've been able to do at least is illustrate for you how they are related. They don't exist in isolation. It's not like the AI in education thing is one problem and social engineering in education is another problem and global citizenship is yet a third problem. They're just three names for the same. There are three things that are components of communism. the newfangled version of global communism. This is how they're selling it. This is how they're doing it. And they're better, as the essay said that I read to you at the outset, they're better able to do it at scale than they ever have been. They've wanted to do it for 100 years. It just didn't have the technology. Think of the $6 million man. Remember, it's like, we can rebuild him. We have the technology. Remember that? I'm dating myself, but now, we can rebuild it. Society, we have the technology. That's what they think. but it's instead of 6 billion, it's more like, 600 trillion or something, like a bottomless pit of money. And they genuinely think they can make a stronger, better, faster, more moral, more sustainable, whatever that means. What they really mean by sustainable is they get to sustain their elite power. We were making too much progress with equality, political, economic, social equality. We, as a human species, had gone too far in terms of dismantling arbitrary aristocracies and social hierarchies that really didn't make sense. We had dismantled stereotypes. We had enabled travel and integration and intermarriage and cultural, sharing organically. Just using the technology we had at our disposal as it developed, we were doing it. And things were going great. And that the panic, in my view, their panic is not because the world is coming to an end. It's their world was threatened. The idea that the masses needed their betters to tell them what to do all the time and be the the holders of all scientific knowledge or all knowledge as it had been through the millennia, whether it was the church or the scientists, when everyone else was like a farmer, factory worker. Now, the knowledge-based economy and international travel and sharing all that, we don't need a little elite subset of super rich people to tell us what to do, and they don't own all the knowledge. We can have it. It's at their fingertips. What's going to happen to us? We're not going to be super important anymore. We're going to have to go to regular old cocktail parties where there are regular people. Very scary. So we need to sustain our power. Amplify every problem like it's a crisis. And then tell everybody they have an obligation to solve it while we sit here and eat foie gras and fly on our private jets. Yeah, that's what it is. So, like I said, I'm sure I didn't do justice at all. People you need to follow if you aren't already. I see one of them in my chat here, Christine. Makeup and excuses has credit affordances, Pavlov. I love you. So you have to follow the Palmer Worm on X, and she also has a Substack. So go read. I've not seen anybody dive so deeply into all of the origin story of this. I'm still learning. I'm more of a presenter than an analyst. Although I say I'm an education analyst, it's at the surface level. Christine's like way down in the weeds, and knows more about it than 10 people I know. And then James, of course, James Lindsay. You need to just listen to everything, read everything, and I really think we will find when we are old and gray that he will be known as one of the most important thinkers and writers and speakers of our time. And I feel very privileged to know him. And you need to, follow Saya Sophia. She's here in the chat. You need to follow her YouTube channel. If you want to dive into science and look at some of these papers, these research papers, and see what passes for research methodology these days and what kinds of things are, being used when they say this is evidence-based, you need to follow her channel because she will explain in detail what is going on with scientific research and does take apart some of these papers in a way that I never could because I don't understand a lot of that stuff. And you need to, I put the link to the essay by I'm saying it so wrong, Christine. Carvalho. So, okay. I put it in and I'll put it down below too after the show. That's just one essay. There are books. There are 2 books in particular that I'm told I should read, and I'll put the titles of them below. So if you're really interested in how this all works, go to the UNESCO site, look for global citizenship, read what you can. Hopefully what I've done, though, is make you aware of why it all happens and that what's really going on is an attack on the philosophy of America, what it means to be American, what it means to be a citizen, what it means to be an individual with rights. And that the only way you're going to protect that It's not, you can't go out and beg for Superman, like elect Superman to save you. That's not going to happen. You have to live that philosophy every day, and you have to defend it. You have to defend it in your own house with your own kids. You have to teach civics yourself. You have to refuse to give loyalty oaths and do diversity pledges and all this other junk. And if it comes to it, sue. And you just have to push them to enforce the laws that we have and defend your rights as an American. Defend America yourself. Live free. That's the only, and speak truth every single day. Do not let their lies and their language enter your mouth. Listen to James Lindsay's little bullet podcast about linguistic discipline and do it. Don't use their terms. Don't use their language. It's sex, not gender. Don't let their stuff enter your mouth. Even when you're talking about it to other people, use the proper term. And I think, I'm so offended. You won't use the right word. So their problem. You just keep on keeping on. Anyway, thank you very, very much. And I am so grateful to you guys for coming. Please consider, again, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like, share, and consider becoming a member of The Reason We Learn community at Woke Screen. The link will also be below. I have a parent support group on Wednesdays and Sundays for parents to talk about whatever you want. Not political. I'm not going to proselytize. I'm just going to try to answer your questions and give you advice the best I can for whatever your situation is that you're dealing with your kid in school. Do the best I can. But if you want that kind of access to me for, potentially 4 hours a week in a private call, join The Reason We Parent and you'll get that. It also helps support my work. So thank you in advance. I have t-shirts for sale in the store, and I appreciate all of you. I appreciate you coming. I appreciate you sharing this broadcast, watching this broadcast, and helping me continue to do this work to make you aware of what's going on in education in America. Thank you so much, everyone. And I hope you have a great rest of your week. Bye.